Paul George. The NBA suspended him 25 games for violating the league's anti-drug program.
You took some enhancement drugs to make you better on the court, but then you blame it on mental health.
Paul George just caught a rough 25-game ban. Now he is publicly apologizing, citing his mental health treatment. Yet behind closed doors, the league reportedly proposed a trade if he snitched. Who exactly are they truly hunting? Let me strip this entire mess down for you. Paul George's banishment. So here we stand. People discussing one of the wildest sagas to strike the NBA this year. Paul George, the 9-time All-Star, the icon. Philly paid $200 million to rescue their team. Just got himself banned for 25 games. Without salary. And let me tell you this is not a petty slap on the wrist scenario. This is a fresh breach of the NBA and union anti-drug code. And the fallout is absolutely catastrophic for both the athlete and his squad. The ban dropped on January 31st of 2026, and it began instantly with the 76ers. Match against the New Orleans Pelicans that very same night. Now dwell on that for a moment. 1 minute you are getting prepared to suit up and play ball. The next second, the league is telling you to pack your gear and head home for the next 2.5 months. That is exactly what hit Paul George and the hoops world is. Still trying to make sense of it all. Now here's where it gets intriguing. The NBA did not reveal the specific substance that Paul George tested positive for. They never do that. It is all confidential under the league's code. But what we do know is that this 25-game ban aligns with violations for performance enhancing. Drugs, steroids, peptides, SARMs, or other prohibited substances under the league's banned substances list. And no, we are not talking about marijuana here because the NBA removed natural cannabis from the banned list back in 2023. So whatever Paul George took, it was something that the league deems a serious offense. But hold on, it gets even more intriguing. Paul George released a statement to ESPN's Shams Charania shortly after the news broke. And this is what he had to say. He said that over the past few years, he has stressed the value of mental health. And in the process of recently seeking therapy for a trouble of his own, he made the mistake of using an improper medication. He took total responsibility for his actions and accepted the repercussions. He apologized to his family, the Sixers organization, his teammates, and the fans for letting them down. He said he would continue to prioritize his mental health and return to the court a stronger player in person. Now I want to be crystal clear about something here. Paul George is spinning this whole situation as a mental health issue. He is stating that he was chasing treatment for a mental health problem, popped some medication that he should not have, touched, and that is how he ended up in this jam. And you know what? The guy has been open about mental health. Struggles in the past, citing on his podcast anxiety and depression during the 2020 NBA bubble and after playoff disappointments. So it is not like this is coming out of nowhere. But here's where I must put on my thinking cap for a second. The timing of all this is totally fascinating. Just a few days before this, ban was announced on January 28th. To be exact, Paul George had a monster game against the Milwaukee Bucks. We are talking 32 points with 9 3-pointers in a win. 9 3-pointers. This is a man who has been dealing with injuries all season long, appearing in only 27 games while missing 20. And suddenly he comes out and drops 32 points like he is in his prime again. Former NBA player Gilbert and his podcast co-host pointed out exactly how fishy that performance looked to the league.
So last Tuesday against the Bucks, PG had 35, 5-5, hit 9 threes.
Yeah, that got him tested.
And then ended up getting suspended a few days later on that Saturday.
He's been injured for so long, you know.
Some folks are speculating that this performance might have triggered enhanced scrutiny or testing from the league. You know how it goes. When a player suddenly starts performing at a level that seems inconsistent with their recent track record, the league starts asking questions, and apparently those questions led to some answers that Paul George did not want anyone to find. Now let us talk about the financial impact of this situation, because the numbers are absolutely staggering. Paul George signed a 4-year, $212 million contract with the Sixers in 2024. His salary for the 2025-26 season is roughly $51 million. That breaks down to just about $469,000 per game. So when you multiply that by 25 games, you are looking at Paul George losing roughly $11 million in forfeited salary. $11 million just gone because of one mistake. The man is 35 years old. He turned 35 in May of 2025, and he has been dealing with injuries throughout his entire career. Now he has to sit at home and watch his squad grinds toward postseason play minus him. Suspension keeps him out till March 25th, 2026, when Philly welcomes the Chicago Bulls. This implies he remains eligible for merely the last 10 contests of the regular scheduled slate. 10 games to secure rhythm before the playoffs commence. The Sixers stood at 26 and 21, ranking 6th in the Eastern Conference when news dropped. They held a 4-game victory streak. They seemed like bona fide threats with Joel Embiid, plus Tyrese Maxey joining Paul George. Then just like that, a third of the triad vanishes for nearly 3 months. You can't invent this fiction. Now, here's a detail many observers don't know. The NBA anti-drug protocol actually permits a loophole known as dubbed a therapeutic use exemption. If a player possesses valid medical grounds for a substance sitting on the banned list, they can request this waiver and obtain permission to use the drug sans penalty. Guys do this continuously for issues like ADHD meds or similar remedies. Yet evidently Paul George failed to secure one of these waivers. He simply went ahead and used whatever prescription he consumed without clearing it through the league first. And that misstep is precisely what landed him in hot water. But here's the angle that really has folks buzzing. Paul insists this revolved around mental health meds, but he never clarified precisely what substance he took or how. It breached the code. He merely stated it was an unapproved drug. And that ambiguity has left many folks totally confused and questioning what truly went down. No one buys the mental health defense. The response to Paul George's suspension has been nothing short of nuclear. We are speaking about media. Voices, retired pros, experts, and supporters all sounding off on what they suspect actually transpired. And let me be clear, not everyone is buying the mental health narrative. Sports broadcasters Donnie and Joe from Sports Grid unleashed hell when dissecting Paul George's remarks. They went directly at his neck.
Just admit it. Just admit it. You're getting older here. You're feeling the weight of that contract. You want to make sure that you're a good player on the Philadelphia 76ers. You took some enhancement drugs to make you better on the court, but then you blame it on mental health.
Over on Inside the NBA, Shaq and Charles Barkley conveyed shock at the report. Barkley specifically noted the historical softness toward pot, but stressed that the mandates are tighter now concerning other substances. He dubbed the whole ordeal fishy. And, when Charles Barkley calls it fishy, folks usually tune in. The guy has navigated the association for ages, and he spots when things don't add up. Stephen A. Smith on First Take labeled this a crushing blow to Sixer title dreams, and he is totally correct on that point. This roster was meant to vie for a championship, and now they must figure out how to endure without a key asset for 25 contests. That isn't something you can just ignore and act as if it doesn't count. The Philly front office has to be downright enraged over this mess. Ex-NBA talents like Jeff Teague showed skepticism, hinting that the league's warning bells were tripped by George's recent scoring explosion. He asked if mental wellness meds like antipsychotics or ADHD pills deserve such a stiff punishment if they aren't explicitly performance-enhancing substances, and that's a valid query. If an athlete is truly pursuing care for a mental struggle, do they deserve such harsh discipline? The Sports Grid crew kept firing, noting how this story will dog Paul George for the entire balance of his playing days. I mean, it's not mental health. It's not rocket science here. I mean, the fact that he deflected and made it about mental health was just crazy. Just own it and move on, because Donnie, nobody will care in another week. And that'll be the end of it. But
on the Speakeasy podcast, the hosts were even more blunt. They called George's explanation full of it,
alleging he cheated with performance boosters and utilized mental health as a smokescreen. Now, that's a heavy claim, but it echoes what a crowd is thinking in private. When you emerge with a nebulous quote that explains, zilch observers are going to connect the dots. Personally, and the majority of times they won't offer you the benefit of trust. Nightcap voices, Shannon Sharp. And Chad Ochocinco-Johnson wrestled with the mental health topic. Sharp voiced some empathy for Paul, but also stated that ownership counts. You can pity a guy and still demand responsibility for his moves. That isn't contradictory. That's merely fair play. When it's all said and done, George is a grown man who made a choice, and now he must endure the results. social platforms completely exploded with takes. We are speaking about memes grilling George's weak play despite the alleged juice. The masses were writing stuff like, Paul George banned 25 games for breaking the league dope rules, and the guy was taking performance-boosting gear and was still garbage. Someone else shared a clip of George airballing a brick with the tagline noting he was on gear and he still played like that. The web can be totally savage mostly, but you must concede there is deep irony in a baller supposedly dosing boosters and still not really performing at a high level constantly. Some folks on social apps even started asking for checking other kings like LeBron James. Yet there is genuinely no proof to back any accusations regarding other athletes. But that is just how the web moves. One player gets busted and instantly everyone looks to see who else might be masking anything. It is human instinct to be doubtful once one member in a squad gets caught. The guesswork about what supplement Paul George really used has been going crazy. Most buffs and pundits propose it might be a stimulant, like Adderall, which is meant for ADHD but is blocked without a therapeutic use waiver. Ballers can apply for those exceptions if they hold a bona fide clinical need, but supposedly Paul George did not secure one. Others look to conventional performance-boosting gear, given his years and recent production drops. Social media voices have started, calling him PEDP and Prescription P, which is frankly sort of witty if you muse about it. The guy has had so many monikers throughout his journey, and now he holds a few more that he likely does not need. Experts like Rhea Hughes faulted George for not asking his rep, or The Office about the prescription previously, and that is a sound judgment. These athletes have access to club medics, health crews, and provisions that most folks can only dream of. If you are planning to use any sort of treatments, particularly when you know you are open to dope testing, you need to verify it is cleared. That is just basic sense. You take in over $50 million yearly. You can afford to dial a simple call and ask if anything is safe to use. Ideas about what he used involve illegal, man-made cannabinoids, roids, SARMs, or peptides. Yet lacking formal verification from the office, we are all just speculating at this stage. The NBA keeps silence in these matters, which implies we might never learn precisely what Paul George popped positive for. And frankly, that secrecy is likely the single factor keeping him from even more humiliation right now. On Gil's Arena show, the guys had an intriguing view on the entire ordeal. They spoke about how guys have been facing these exact problems for ages.
Mental health. It's mental health.
Listen, I can tell you too.
Nigga 41 out there doing some other shit. Why we ain't testing him?
They do.
$50 million on his body.
He do.
What's up with Paul? Paul can't do it, but he can?
No. You just can't get caught. That's the thing.
Now, here is where the saga takes an even more gripping twist. Since while everyone is fixated on what Paul saw, George did foul, there is another angle of this debacle that nobody is truly talking about, and that concerns some rumored deals that the office may have put to him behind shut doors. Paul George ratting on other guys. Now, we reach the slice of this drama that has truly got the basketball scene shaking, because according to news that have been floating, Paul George was not just banished and sent on his path. There was supposedly something more playing out behind the curtain that pulls other guys in the association. According to a Facebook update from Scrooge TV, Paul George was handed a shot to drop the names of ballers he knows who are still dosing banned. Contraband in trade for getting his banishment voided. And here's the part that has folks chatting. Paul George supposedly declined to do it. He took his 25-game penalty instead of snitching out his fellow ballers. The feedback on that thread were full of folks showing props for George, stating stuff like, he kept it real and he did not. Sing. Now I want to be plain about something here. The NBA's formal anti-drug system does not openly contain such bonuses, and no giant platforms like ESPN, AP News, or The Athletic have verified this. Rumor. But the truth that this tale is out there and folks are debating it tells you a lot about how the basketball I've seen views these types of jams. Guys stick together, and the thought of telling on your teammates is something that is strictly looked down in pro sports. It is an unspoken law that you do not breach. On Gil's Arena podcast, the host argued how the league guards guys by keeping all drug names under wraps, which permits players to spin the story regarding their banishments.
Because, the NBA, they protect their players.
That's what I already made. We had this conversation.
Because the NBA protect their players, they're not going to give you the name of what it was.
No,
for sure.
Let us look into the wider picture of the NBA's anti-drug policy, because it helps show why this case is so massive. The plan started back in 1983 amid wide worries over drug abuse in the league, specifically snow blowing through the 70s and 80s. Back then, dope was everywhere in the league. Some figures state nearly 75% of guys snorted powder at some stage that era. It was a darker age, and the association was fighting to salvage its reputation. The powder epidemic almost annihilated professional hoops entirely. Gate receipts dropped. Crowds lost interest, and the league's standing was in tatters. Then Commissioner David Stern arrived and made fixing the business one of his main objectives. The strict substance policy was a direct result of those actions, and it has changed considerably over the decades to catch modern compounds and fresh problems. The strict rules follow Article 33, the 2023 Collective Bargaining Agreement. The punishments for performance-boosting gear are strict. First infraction costs you 25 games, second offense costs you 55 games, and third strike gets you permanently ejected from the association with possible return after 2 years. Paul George sits at the initial strike stage, which implies if he ever gets popped again, he is staring down, losing over half a campaign. A third failure would kill his run completely. The system separates banned compounds into distinct brackets. You have your street drugs like blow acid painkillers and pure crystal, meth. Then you have your chemicals for athletic enhancement, which cover juice plus human growth, hormone peptides and SARMs. And then there are fake cannabinoids, which remain strictly outlawed even though organic weed was scrubbed from the sheet. Screening is random and occurs year-round, even during the off-season break. Athletes can be subjected to piss and blood screens at any moment, and declining to submit surely brings on consequences just as harsh as flunking cold. Since 1986, there were roughly 42 total bans under the prohibited substance rules, with only about 13 explicitly for pure performance boosters. That is not a ton when you consider just how many guys have cycled through the ranks over the last 40 years. Either the screening is not that tight, or athletes are just damn skilled at not getting snagged. Some folks claim that the league does not truly want to bust too many stars because it would be awful for revenue. Some of the most famous stories in hoop history involve Michael Ray Richardson, who was exiled for life in 1986 after 3 dirty tests. He was a 4-time All-Star, averaging 14.8 points nightly, and his path was totally wrecked. By habits, he was the first man ever reinstated but never played in the league. Then there was John Drew of the Atlanta Hawks, who also caught a permanent expulsion for recurring drug infractions. He was an all-star who scored over 20 points a night early in his run. The drug days claimed so many gifted athletes. Roy Tarpley of the Dallas Mavericks was another sad example. He was a skilled 7-footer whose powder habit killed what could have been a legendary basketball journey. He caught a lifetime ban in 91, was briefly returned, and then exiled again in 95. He even sued the league alleging bias under the Americans with Disabilities Act, but he dropped that fight. Then we saw Chris Anderson, aka Birdman, catch a 2-year ban for meth in 2006, but came back and won a title with the Heat in 2013. That is a redemption story if I ever heard one. It shows that guys can return from these holes if they get their heads right. More recently, we surely saw Tristan Thompson in 24 caught 25 games for Abuda, and Sarm LGD 4033. DeAndre Ayton took 25 games back in 19 for a diuretic, which is a masking agent. John Collins also caught 25 games in 19 for growth, hormone-releasing peptide 2. And just last year, Bobby Portis of the Milwaukee Bucks got banned for tramadol. The Gills Arena crew compared Paul George's dilemma directly to the Portis mess.
How many games did Bobby Porter get suspended for? Say it. 20 what?
25?
25.
For what?
Wait,
Bobby Portis? What did
Bobby Porter, remember last year he got him 25 games.
Oh, I forgot.
What was that?
Portis's rep argued it was inadvertent intake, just like what Paul George is claiming now. The cycle is getting recognizable at this stage. A guy gets popped, they roll out with a presser claiming it was an error or an accident, and everyone pushes on until the next victim gets snagged. Now let us all discuss what this implies for the Sixers moving ahead, because this squad has legit title hopes. The franchise actually gets some surprise cap relief from this mess. According to ESPN's Bobby Marks, the Sixers will save over $5 million in luxury tax bills as a part of George's ban.
So ESPN's Bobby Marks reports that the Sixers will save more than $5 million in luxury tax payments as a part of Georgia's suspension, leaving the team a little over $1 million over the threshold and making it easier for the 76ers to dip out of the tax this week without harming the roster.
The squad gets a $5.8 million tax variance credit, equaling half of Georgia's docked ledger. That cuts their spot from deep in tax debt to a mere $1.26 million over. That might truly allow squad swaps, avoiding sparking tougher cap limits. As the league trade cutoff draws closer, that extra fiscal room permits Philly to maybe grab talent to reinforce their bench. Pundits have hinted the club might eye rotation guys on tanking squads to fix holes shown during the ban. Man, Nick Nurse must lean on bench pieces like Kelly Oubre Jr. and Caleb Martin to plug the gap left by Georgia's leave. The association has evolved a great deal regarding psychological welfare recognition. The league started the NBA Mind Health Drive about 2018 and 19 as a specific mental care plan. Since the 19-20 campaign, all 30 pro clubs must keep at least one full-time certified mental doc on payroll. Athletes get comped entry to apps such as the Headspace meditation tool. The league founded its own mental care and fitness system in 2018 too. Stars like DeMar DeRozan and Kevin Love have been vital in starting dialogues and lessening shame by telling their private stories. DeRozan posted concerning his fights against depression and worry back in 2018. And Love described a panic episode in a Players Tribune piece. That same time, he started the Kevin Love Fund and became a huge backer for mental health knowledge in athletics. Paul George personally has praised those guys for blazing the path and has joined in Drive's emphasizing fragility. Yet here's the query that no one dares to voice. Is Paul George truly battling some mental health demons? Or is he wielding mental health as a handy cover for getting busted with performance-boosting juice? The reality is we might never know for certain. What we do know is that he is going to sit 25 dates drop. Nearly $12 million, and his squad is going to have to work out how to endure minus him. Paul George has seen scandals prior in his tenure. There was that paternity suit back in 2013 with Daniela Rajic where a court dubbed him a deadbeat father for supposedly dodging accountability and not supplying cash. The suit included fights regarding payments and access, and it was a nasty scenario that unfolded in the gossip rags. George and Rajic later made up, got hitched in 22, and raised 3 kids together. So that drama had a solid closing at least. Then there were those tactless posts regarding Ray Rice's domestic abuse incident in 2014. George wrote thoughts that appeared to back or minimize parts of the football player's domestic violence banishment. This brought massive heat even from Pacers boss Larry Bird. George scrubbed the post and said sorry, stating that he does not support domestic harm, yet the wreck was made and folks have not forgotten about it. But this dope suspension could be the largest scandal of his whole journey. At 35 years old with a giant deal and title dreams, this banishment could not have arrived at a poorer moment. The guy claims he is going to use this span to ensure his head and frame are in the prime shape to aid the club when he is back. We shall see if that really transpires. For now, Philadelphia is left to ponder what might have been.